We talked about a non-disclosure because it was like, let's not fight about finances publicly.
I do not agree with things that he does. I do not agree with his attitudes.
He regrets not apologizing.
Sister Wives Reunion Part 2 delivers raw, emotional confrontations as Kody's explosive behavior and Robyn's grievances take center stage. The second installment of the Sister Wives one-on-one reunion special continued to peel back layers of unresolved conflict, deep-seated resentment, and fundamental disagreements about what caused the Brown family's spectacular collapse. With host Sukanya Krishnan guiding the conversation, Part 2 shifted focus to some of the most painful moments in the family's recent history, including Kody Brown's emotional meltdowns and Robyn Brown's feelings of abandonment and betrayal by her sister wives. Where Part 1 of the reunion explored property disputes, accusations of manipulation, and questions about relationship dynamics, Part 2 delved into the emotional core of the family's dysfunction. The episode examined how anger, defensiveness, and the absence of accountability created an environment where plural marriage could no longer survive, leaving behind a trail of hurt feelings, broken trust, and irreconcilable differences. Revisiting Kody Brown's infamous meltdown. One of the central focuses of the second reunion episode was a detailed examination of Kody Brown's explosive emotional behavior, which many fans and family members view as a critical turning point in the family's dissolution. Throughout recent seasons of Sister Wives, viewers witnessed Kody's increasingly volatile reactions to conflict, disagreement, and perceived disrespect from his wives. Part 2 of the reunion special provided an opportunity to revisit these moments and explore their impact on the family. Kody's meltdowns have been characterized by intense anger, raised voices, accusatory language, and a seeming inability to regulate his emotional responses during difficult conversations. Rather than approaching conflicts with calm and measured dialogue, Kody frequently escalated tensions, turning what might have been productive discussions into explosive confrontations that left his wives feeling attacked, diminished, and emotionally unsafe. The reunion special examined how these outbursts affected each of Kody's relationships differently. For Christine Brown, who ultimately became the first wife to definitively leave the plural marriage, Kody's anger represented a fundamental breakdown in the respect and kindness she needed from a partner. For Janelle Brown, his volatile behavior made practical problem-solving nearly impossible and demonstrated an authoritarian approach that conflicted with her desire for partnership and collaboration. For Meri Brown, his defensiveness and hostility reinforced years of emotional distance and rejection that had already damaged their relationship beyond repair. During the reunion, the discussion highlighted specific instances where Kody's inability to control his emotions proved particularly destructive. His reactions during family conflicts over COVID-19 protocols became emblematic of larger patterns in how he handled disagreement. Rather than listening to his wives' concerns, acknowledging their perspectives, or working toward compromise, Kody often responded with anger at what he perceived as challenges to his authority and judgment. The COVID-19 pandemic, which forced the family to make difficult decisions about safety protocols and visitation, became a crucible that revealed fundamental problems in how Kody related to his wives. His insistence on strict adherence to rules he established, combined with his furious reactions when family members questioned or struggled to comply with these rules, created an environment of fear and resentment rather than unity and cooperation. Several of Kody's former wives reflected during the reunion on how his anger made genuine communication impossible. When someone fears an explosive reaction to an honest expression of feelings or concerns, they stop being honest. They stop sharing what's really troubling them. They begin to withdraw emotionally as a form of self-protection. This dynamic created a destructive cycle where Kody's anger pushed his wives away. Their withdrawal frustrated and angered him further. An emotional distance between them grew increasingly unbridgeable. The reunion episode underscored a crucial point. Kody's outbursts were not isolated incidents, but part of a broader pattern of behavior that systematically destroyed the emotional safety necessary for intimate relationships to thrive. His wives needed to feel they could express themselves, disagree, make mistakes, and have their own perspectives without facing verbal attacks or emotional punishment. When that safety disappeared, so did the foundation of their marriages. Kody's justifications and the question of accountability. Throughout the reunion discussion of his emotional volatility, Kody offered his own perspective on his behavior, often framing his outbursts as understandable reactions to perceived betrayal, disrespect, or abandonment by his wives. According to Kody's narrative, his anger was born from frustration at family members who refused to follow reasonable rules, who questioned his leadership, or who prioritized their own desires over family unity. This self-justification is significant because it reveals Kody's fundamental difficulty in accepting responsibility for how his actions affected others. While he acknowledged feeling overwhelmed and angry, he stopped short of fully owning how his emotional volatility damaged his relationships and contributed to his wives' decisions to leave. The distinction between acknowledging anger and accepting responsibility for its consequences is crucial. Kody seems willing to admit he was angry and frustrated, but he consistently positions this anger as a justified response to his wife's failures rather than as a problem he needed to address within himself. This framing allows him to validate his own feelings while avoiding genuine accountability for the harm his behavior caused. Several of the former sister wives pointed out during the reunion that Kody's anger was often disproportionate to the situations that triggered it. A wife struggling to comply with COVID protocols wasn't engaged in deliberate betrayal. She was navigating genuinely difficult circumstances and trying to balance competing needs and concerns. A wife expressing disagreement with Kody's decisions wasn't showing disrespect. She was attempting to participate as an equal partner in decision-making. But Kody's reactions often treated these normal relationship challenges as profound offenses that warranted extreme emotional responses. This pattern of escalation rather than de-escalation became a defining characteristic of Kody's interactions with his wives during the final years of the Plural marriage. Rather than using conflicts as opportunities to understand his wives' perspectives better, address underlying issues, or strengthen their relationships, Kody's volatile reactions turned every disagreement into a crisis that further eroded trust and connection. The reunion episode highlighted how Kody's inability or unwillingness to manage his emotional responses became an insurmountable obstacle to maintaining healthy plural marriage dynamics. Plural marriage, perhaps more than monogamous marriage, requires extraordinary emotional regulation, patience, and the ability to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics without letting frustration or anger take control. Kody's pattern of explosive reactions demonstrated that he lacked these essential capacities, or at least was unwilling to exercise them when dealing with wives he felt had wronged him. The impossible standard of emotional management. What emerged from the reunion discussion was a troubling dynamic where Kody's wives were expected to manage not only their own emotions, but also to carefully regulate their behavior to avoid triggering his outbursts. This created an impossible standard where the women bore responsibility for maintaining peace by not upsetting Kody, while Kody himself felt entitled to express his anger freely without constraint. Several of the former wives described walking on eggshells, carefully considering how to phrase concerns or requests to minimize the risk of an explosive reaction. This kind of dynamic is exhausting and unsustainable. It transforms relationships from partnerships between equals into hierarchical arrangements, where one person's emotional state dominates and controls interactions. The reunion discussion revealed how this pattern manifested differently with each wife. Christine eventually decided she could no longer tolerate being in a relationship where she felt she had to constantly manage her husband's emotional volatility. Janelle, characteristically more detached and practical, found Kody's anger made it impossible to address practical family matters effectively. Meri, who had already experienced years of emotional rejection from Kody, found his anger reinforced her sense that the relationship was beyond repair. What none of the former wives seemed willing to do anymore was accept the premise that Kody's anger was their responsibility to prevent or manage. This shift from internalizing blame for his reactions to recognizing his behavior as his own responsibility marked a crucial turning point in their journeys toward leaving their marriages. Robyn Brown's anger over lack of support. While part one of the reunion saw Robyn Brown defending herself against accusations of being submissive or manipulative, part two provided space for Robyn to express her own grievances and frustrations. In a revealing segment, Robyn opened up about her anger toward the other sister wives for what she characterized as a complete lack of emotional support during the family's most difficult periods. Robyn's perspective offers a striking counter-narrative to the stories told by Christine, Janelle, and Meri. While the former wives describe feeling neglected, dismissed, and eventually driven away by Kody's behavior and apparent preference for Robyn, Robyn herself claims to have felt isolated, abandoned, and unfairly blamed for problems she didn't create. According to Robyn's account during the reunion, she entered the Brown family with genuine faith in the plural marriage principle and sincere expectations that the sister wives would support each other through challenges. She believed that when difficulties arose, the women would come together to address problems collaboratively, offering each other emotional support and working as a united team to maintain family harmony. Instead, Robyn claims she found herself isolated and targeted. While she was often portrayed as Kody's favorite wife, a characterization she has consistently resisted, she simultaneously felt excluded from meaningful collaboration with the other women. Rather than experiencing the sisterhood she had hoped for, Robyn describes being treated as an outsider or even as a threat by wives who had been in the family long before she joined. Robyn's expression of anger during the reunion revealed depths of frustration and hurt that she may not have fully articulated before. She clearly feels misunderstood and mischaracterized by both her sister wives and by viewers who have followed the family story. From her perspective, she has been unfairly cast as the villain in the family's collapse when she sees herself as someone who tried to hold things together even as everyone else was pulling away. The question of Robyn's support claims. Robyn's claims of lacking support from her sister wives raise important questions about what kind of support she expected and whether those expectations were reasonable given the circumstances. The other wives have consistently stated that they felt emotionally sidelined and dismissed long before they chose to leave their marriages to Kody. If they felt neglected and undervalued in their own relationships, how much emotional energy could they reasonably be expected to invest in supporting Robyn? Christine Brown has been particularly vocal about feeling invisible in her marriage to Kody, especially after Robyn joined the family. She has described watching Kody's attention, affection, and priority shift dramatically toward his newest wife, leaving her feeling like an afterthought in her own marriage. For Christine to then be expected to provide emotional support to the woman who seemed to have received everything Christine longed for in her relationship with Kody would have required extraordinary emotional generosity. Janelle Brown has emphasized in previous episodes and reunion segments how Kody's behavior became increasingly rigid and authoritarian, making cooperation and compromise nearly impossible. She has described trying to work with Kody on practical family matters only to encounter defensiveness, anger, and inflexibility. If Janelle was struggling to get her own needs met and to maintain a functional relationship with Kody, expecting her to simultaneously provide support to Robyn may have been unrealistic. Meri Brown's situation is perhaps the most complicated. She has described years of emotional distance and rejection from Kody that left her feeling disconnected from both him and the broader family dynamic. A person who is herself emotionally starving in a relationship has little capacity to nourish others. Meri's own need for support and connection was so profound and so unmet that expecting her to support Robyn would have been asking her to give from an empty well. The disconnect between Robyn's expectations of sister wife support and the other women's capacity to provide it reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about the state of the family. Robyn seems to have believed that despite the problems in the individual marriages, the sister-wife relationships should have remained strong and supportive. But the reality was that the entire family system was breaking down, and women who felt neglected by their shared husband had neither the energy nor the inclination to support the wife who appeared to receive his devotion. Robyn's isolation and the favorite wife dynamic. One of the most poignant aspects of Robyn's expressed frustration is her description of feeling isolated within the family. Despite being perceived as Kody's favorite, or perhaps because of it, Robyn claimed she felt alone and unsupported during the family's collapse. This isolation speaks to the complicated position she occupied within the family structure. Being perceived as the favorite wife creates its own set of challenges and difficulties. The other wives may have resented Robyn for the attention and priority Kody gave her, making genuine friendship or sisterhood difficult to maintain. At the same time, Kody's intense focus on his relationship with Robyn may have created unrealistic expectations that she alone could meet all his emotional needs, leaving her feeling overwhelmed by the pressure. Robyn's isolation was likely exacerbated by the fact that she disagreed with the other wives' assessments of Kody and their marriages. While Christine, Janelle, and Meri were concluding that their relationships with Kody were unsustainable and deciding to leave, Robyn was committed to her marriage and believed in staying together as a family. This fundamental disagreement about the right path forward would have made it very difficult for Robyn to find common ground with the other women. Additionally, Robyn may have felt caught in the middle between loyalty to her husband and maintaining relationships with her sister wives. If she supported and defended Kody against the other wives' criticisms, she risked further damaging her relationships with them. But if she validated their complaints about Kody, she would have been undermining her own marriage and the man she loved. This impossible position may have contributed significantly to her sense of isolation. The reunion discussion revealed that Robyn genuinely expected the sister wives to come together to support each other and address problems collaboratively, even when those problems stem from their relationships with Kody. This expectation suggests Robyn may not have fully understood or accepted that by the time the family began to fracture, the other wives had already concluded their marriages were over. They weren't looking to fix things with Kody, they were looking to exit. Under those circumstances, collaboration and mutual support became impossible. Robyn's claim of dealing with Kody's volatility alone. A particularly significant aspect of Robyn's expressed grievances was her claim that she was left to deal with Kody's emotional volatility largely on her own. According to Robyn, as the other wives withdrew from their relationships with Kody, she bore the brunt of his emotional turmoil, frustration, and anger without support or assistance from the sister wives. This claim illuminates a difficult truth about the final years of the Brown family's plural marriage. As Christine, Janelle, and Meri pulled away from Kody, whether physically, emotionally, or both, Robyn remained his primary emotional partner. She was the one listening to his frustrations, managing his moods, and trying to help him navigate the collapse of his other marriages. From Robyn's perspective, this was an enormous emotional burden that she carried without the sisterhood support she had expected from plural marriage. However, from the other wives' perspectives, Robyn's situation was largely of her own making. They had each tried to work with Kody on their relationships. They had expressed concerns, attempted to communicate about problems, and asked for their needs to be met. When those efforts failed repeatedly and they were met with anger, defensiveness, or dismissiveness, they made the difficult decision to protect themselves by withdrawing. The expectation that they should then support Robyn in managing Kody's reactions to their withdrawals would have seemed absurd to these women. They were setting boundaries and leaving relationships that had become damaging to them. Expecting them to help Robyn cope with Kody's anger about their departures essentially asked them to prioritize Kody's and Robyn's emotional needs over their own well-being and autonomy. Robyn's claim also raises questions about whether she fully recognized the extent to which Kody's behavior was problematic, if she was managing his emotional volatility and trying to help him through his reactions to his wives leaving. Did she ever question whether his responses were appropriate or healthy? Did she encourage him to take responsibility for his role in the marriage's failures? Or did she primarily support and validate his perspective, reinforcing his sense of victimhood and anger toward his departing wives? The fundamental incompatibility of perspectives. Part 2 of the reunion special made abundantly clear that Robyn's perspective on the family's collapse remains fundamentally incompatible with those of Christine, Janelle, and Meri, where Robyn sees herself as lacking support and being unfairly blamed. The other women see her as having been prioritized and favored at their expense, where Robyn claims she wanted family unity and was hurt by the separation. The other wives experienced years of feeling undervalued and eventually chose freedom over continued suffering in dysfunctional marriages. This stark contrast in perspectives points to a deeper truth. Each person's experience of the family's dynamics was shaped by their position within the structure and their relationship with Kody. Robyn's experience as the wife who maintained Kody's affection and priority was entirely different from Christine's experience as a wife who felt increasingly invisible, or Janelle's experience as someone whose practical partnership with Kody deteriorated into authoritarian rigidity, or Meri's experience of years of emotional rejection and distance. These different experiences led to completely different interpretations of the same events. When Robyn saw herself as trying to hold the family together, the other wives may have seen her as enabling Kody's poor treatment of them. When Robyn felt isolated and unsupported, the other wives were protecting themselves from relationships that had become toxic or painful. When Robyn expressed commitment to plural marriage and the family dream, the other wives heard someone who had gotten what she wanted from the arrangement telling them they should continue suffering in what they had lost. The reunion format, with its separate interviews and individual perspectives, highlighted these incompatibilities without resolving them. Each person was able to express their truth, but those truths contradicted each other in ways that cannot be easily reconciled. This suggests that the Browns may never reach a shared understanding of what happened to their family or why their plural marriage failed. The absence of genuine accountability. A recurring and troubling theme throughout Part 2 of the reunion was the apparent absence of genuine accountability from both Kody and Robyn. While Kody acknowledged feeling overwhelmed and angry, he consistently framed these emotions as justified responses to his wives' failures rather than as problems he needed to address within himself. His acknowledgement of anger without accepting responsibility for its destructive consequences represents a failure of accountability. Similarly, Robyn's framing of herself as a victim of circumstances beyond her control, someone who lacked support, was unfairly blamed, and was isolated through no fault of her own, positions her as passive rather than as an active participant in the family's dynamics. This stance likely frustrates viewers who have watched seasons of footage showing Robyn receiving Kody's preferential treatment, having her wishes and concerns prioritized, and benefiting from arrangements that disadvantage the other wives. Genuine accountability requires acknowledging not just what one experienced or felt, but also examining how one's own choices, behaviors, and priorities contributed to problems. It means asking difficult questions like, how did my actions affect others? What could I have done differently? Where did I fall short of my own values or the commitments I made? What responsibility do I bear for the pain others experienced? Neither Kody nor Robyn seemed willing or able to engage in this kind of self-examination during the reunion. Kody's insistence that his anger was justified by his wives' perceived betrayals prevents him from recognizing how his emotional volatility created an environment where his wives felt unsafe and unloved. Robyn's focus on her own feelings of abandonment and lack of support prevents her from recognizing how her position as Kody's clear favorite contributed to the other wives' pain and eventual departures. This absence of accountability matters because without it, there can be no real learning, growth, or healing. If Kody and Robyn cannot acknowledge their roles in the family's dysfunction, they cannot prevent similar patterns from continuing. If they cannot recognize how their choices affected others, they cannot offer the kind of genuine apologies or amends that might facilitate reconciliation or at least peaceful coexistence. The former wives' clarity and moving forward. In contrast to Kody and Robyn's defensive postures, Christine, Janelle, and Meri demonstrated varying degrees of clarity about their decisions to leave their marriages and their assessments of what went wrong. Having had time and distance from their relationships with Kody, these women have been able to process their experiences and articulate what they needed, didn't get, and why they ultimately chose to leave. Kody Brown has been remarkably clear and consistent about her reasons for leaving. She felt unloved, undervalued, and invisible in her marriage to Kody. She wanted a partnership where she felt cherished and prioritized. And when it became apparent that Kody could not or would not provide that kind of relationship, she made the brave decision to leave. Her clarity about what she deserves in a relationship and her willingness to prioritize her own well-being over the Plural family structure represent significant personal growth and self-advocacy. Janelle Brown has approached the dissolution of her marriage with characteristic practicality and emotional detachment. She has described how Kody's increasingly rigid and authoritarian behavior made the kind of partnership she valued impossible to maintain. Her decision to step away from the marriage appears to have been based on a realistic assessment that the relationship was no longer serving her needs, and that continuing would require sacrificing too much of her autonomy and peace of mind. Meri Brown's journey has perhaps been the most complicated and prolonged. Years of emotional rejection and distance from Kody preceded her final decision to leave, and her path has involved confronting painful truths about how long she accepted treatment that diminished her. Her declaration, in part one of the reunion, that she will no longer be silenced, represents a significant evolution in her self-concept and her willingness to advocate for herself, even when others disapprove. The contrast between these women's growing clarity and self-advocacy and Kody and Robyn's continued defensiveness and lack of accountability is striking. The former wives are moving forward, processing their pain, and building new lives based on what they've learned about themselves and what they need. Kody and Robyn, still married and committed to each other, remain caught in patterns of blame and victimhood that prevent genuine reflection or growth. The impact on Kody's relationships with his children. While part 2 of the reunion focused primarily on the marital relationships and sister-wife dynamics, the discussion of Kody's emotional volatility and lack of accountability has important implications for his relationships with his children as well. Several of Kody's adult children have spoken publicly about feeling rejected, undervalued, or abandoned by their father, particularly those whose mothers are Kody, Janelle, or Meri. Kody's pattern of explosive reactions to perceived disrespect or disloyalty has affected not only his wives, but also his children. His rigid COVID protocols and angry responses when family members struggle to comply created rifts with several of his adult children that have proven difficult or impossible to repair. His apparent expectation that family members should prioritize his needs and preferences over their own, combined with his inability to accept criticism or disagreement, has alienated children who are now adults capable of setting their own boundaries. The reunion discussion of Kody's meltdowns and refusal to accept responsibility suggests these patterns extend beyond his marital relationships to his parenting as well. A father who cannot acknowledge his role in damaging relationships, who blames others for conflicts, and who expects forgiveness and reconciliation without genuine accountability is unlikely to successfully repair broken bonds with his children. Robyn's focus on her own lack of support and feelings of abandonment also has implications for the broader family relationships. Her children with Kody remain in his daily life and continue to benefit from his presence and attention. The children of Kody, Janelle, and Meri have largely lost regular access to their father. Robyn's apparent inability or unwillingness to acknowledge this disparity and advocate for better relationships between Kody and all of his children may contribute to ongoing family divisions. The role of anger in family breakdown. Part 2 of the reunion special ultimately serves as a case study in how unmanaged anger can destroy family relationships. Kody's explosive reactions to conflict created an environment where honest communication became impossible. His wives learned that expressing concerns, disagreeing with his decisions, or failing to meet his expectations would result in emotional punishment through his anger and accusations. This dynamic is particularly destructive in the context of plural marriage, which requires even more patience, emotional regulation, and collaborative problem-solving than monogamous marriage. When one person's anger dominates and controls family interactions, The delicate balance required for multiple marital relationships to coexist harmoniously becomes impossible to maintain. Robyn's anger, expressed during part 2 of the reunion, adds another layer to the family's emotional landscape. Her resentment toward her sister wives for their perceived lack of support represents yet another wound that shows no signs of healing. This anger, combined with Kody's ongoing resentment toward his former wives, suggests that the emotional fallout from the family's collapse will continue affecting relationships for years to come. The reunion also revealed how anger prevents the kind of vulnerability and accountability necessary for healing. When people are angry, they tend to focus on how they've been wronged rather than examining their own contributions to problems. Anger creates certainty about one's own rightness and others' wrongness, making genuine dialogue and mutual understanding nearly impossible. Viewer reactions and public perception. The revelations in part 2 of the reunion can be expected to generate strong reactions from the sister wives viewing audience. Fans who have followed the family's story for years have developed their own perspectives on what went wrong and who bears responsibility for the family's dissolution. Kody's continued defensiveness and Robyn's claims of victimhood are likely to frustrate viewers who feel these two have consistently avoided taking responsibility for their roles in the family's problems. Many viewers have expressed sympathy for Christine, Janelle, and Meri, seeing them as women who endured years of emotional neglect and poor treatment before finally choosing to prioritize their own well-being. These viewers are likely to find Robyn's claims of lacking support tone-deaf or offensive, given that she maintained the relationship the other women lost and continues to benefit from Kody's love and attention. However, some viewers may find sympathy for Robyn's expressed feelings of isolation and the difficult position she occupied as the perceived favorite wife. Being resented by one's sister wives while simultaneously managing a husband's emotional volatility would genuinely be challenging, regardless of how one arrived in that position. The public conversation around part 2 of the reunion will likely continue to grapple with questions of accountability, fairness, and the complex dynamics of plural marriage. The episode provides ample material for debate about who bears responsibility for the family's collapse and whether any path toward healing or reconciliation remains possible. The question of resolution and closure. As part 2 of the Sister Wives one-on-one reunion special concluded, it became clear that true resolution may remain elusive for the Brown family. The deep divisions in how family members understand their shared history, the absence of genuine accountability from Kody and Robyn, and the incompatible perspectives on what went wrong all suggest that closure and healing will be difficult, if not impossible, to achieve. The former wives appear to be moving forward with their lives, finding clarity about what they need and deserve in relationships, and building new identities outside of plural marriage. Their healing journey does not appear to require Kody's or Robyn's acknowledgement or validation of their experiences. They have their own truths, and they are proceeding based on those truths regardless of whether others agree. Kody and Robyn, still married to each other, face a different kind of future. They must navigate life as the remaining married couple from what was once a plural family of 5 adults and numerous children. The anger and resentment they both expressed during the reunion suggest they have not yet fully processed the loss or accepted their roles in creating it. Whether they will eventually be able to do this work remains an open question. The reunion special ultimately offers viewers not reconciliation or resolution, but rather a raw, honest look at a family still wounded, still angry, and still deeply divided about fundamental questions of truth, responsibility, and what their shared history really meant. For some viewers, this lack of tidy resolution may be frustrating. For others, it represents an authentic portrayal of how difficult genuine healing can be and how some family rifts may never fully mend. Final observations on Part 2. Sister Wives, one-on-one. Part 2 delivered an emotionally intense and revealing continuation of the Brown family's reunion discussion. By focusing on Kody's explosive behavior and Robyn's expressed anger over lack of support, the episode illuminated crucial dynamics that contributed to the plural marriage's failure. The detailed examination of Kody's meltdowns and his inability to accept responsibility for their destructive impact provided important context for understanding why his wives ultimately chose to leave. His pattern of escalation rather than de-escalation, his justification of his anger as warranted responses to betrayal, and his refusal to acknowledge how his emotional volatility created an unsafe environment all demonstrate the obstacles that made maintaining these marriages impossible. Robyn's expressed frustration and sense of abandonment revealed her own pain and struggle with the family's collapse. However, her framing of herself as a victim lacking support, combined with her apparent inability to recognize how her favored position contributed to the other wife's pain, demonstrates the same pattern of avoided accountability that characterizes Kody's responses. The stark contrast between Kody and Robyn's defensive postures and the former wives' growing clarity and self-advocacy suggests these two groups are on very different trajectories. While Christine, Janelle, and Meri are processing their experiences, setting boundaries, and moving forward, Kody and Robyn remain caught in patterns of blame and resentment, rather than providing healing or closure. Part 2 of the reunion reinforced how deeply divided the family remains. The incompatible perspectives, unresolved anger, and absence of genuine accountability all point toward continued estrangement rather than eventual reconciliation. For viewers seeking to understand why the Brown family's plural marriage ultimately failed, the episode offers valuable insights. When anger replaces empathy, defensiveness replaces accountability, and victimhood replaces responsibility, relationships cannot survive, whether in plural marriage or any other form.